The other thing that happened with me was when they had the electrical workers strike, no, the railroad workers strike. My husband worked with their lawyer. He was a friend of ours. And they arrested a lot of people, and they had a meeting in the baseball park, and as each person came out, a cop would hit him with a bat, something like that. And they had one big meeting in the Plaza de la Revolucion in the middle of Mexico City. And that was, people were beaten and tear gas. Anybody that was going by got tear gas. The man in the store below us. And
so the Mexican government was complicit with the U.S. government.
Well,
in
with
this
arresting Americans?
Yes,
well, I
anti-communist.
I can't say that it was, but I think.
Yes.
And I'll tell you why. We had a television. David was sick. We had to go to a party. Pancho used to sing, play the guitar, and we would sing. And I had to stay home, but he went. He left the house about 10:30 or 11, and I told him how to get there on the bus. And somebody knocked at the door. We lived on the third floor. Somebody knocked at the door, and I went in. I had a bottle of, we had a maid, and I had a bottle of alcohol in my hand, cooling, to give David an alcohol rub. He had a fever. And her name was, we called her Cuca. Cuca opened, no, I opened the door, and there was this real dark man. I thought he was a tourist, smelling like tequila. And I said, in English, "I'm sorry, but my husband's not here, and you can't come in." And he said, "I'm from Gobernacion. What is it like in the States?" It's not foreign relations, it's something else. Interior.
Interior.
Probably interior. "I'm from Gobernacion, and I want to see your papers." And I said, "All right, I'll get them, but let me close the door because it's making a draft and my son is ill." And then I noticed he had his foot in the door, and he said, "No." So we were arguing, and Panchito had on a red pajama. He came and stood by me, and Cuca, who was quite small, was standing on the other side of me. And I had on some bedroom slippers. And I'd been listening to the television, which wasn't on because it had this big thing, and so there was nothing on the television. All of a sudden, he grabbed me by the arm and twirled me around and put his arm under my neck and said, "You come in with us." And he pulled me out, and then the lights went on. And there were 3 other men with him, and they took me down the steps. I didn't even have my feet on the floor. And I was screaming. I was so angry. I didn't feel scared. I just felt furious.
Angry, yes.
And they were carrying me down. We lived on with these steps that went down and a landing and down and a landing. And the man who lived below us, he was the captain in the army. He came out, and they said, "We're from Gobernacion, get back in." And he went back in and shut the door. I was yelling, "Help, help, help." And Panchito came out on the low landing, and I said, "Call." And then I said, maybe I better not say any names. I just said, "Call." And I said, "Your father." And after we left, he went downstairs and called Pablo and told him where I was. And he didn't know the name of the street, but you go out, and my father's down in the corner of Pablo, playing the guitar, and everybody's singing. And Pancho went. Well, they took me down, and our janitor, I guess he is, opened the door gracefully. And they put me in a car and drove me around, and then they felt there were 2 in the front and 2 in the back, and I was in the middle. "Do you want a cigarette?" And "I don't want anything from you. And we're going to deport you." And I said, "Okay, but not my children. We're going to deport you and your children." And they were driving around. And finally, they went in this street where there's a house that they used for foreigners. And they took me in and they sat me down and they took out, and there was a sheet of paper with the names of all these people that were running from McCarthy. And they had checked off 2 names. I knew them both. The first one, they had his name backwards, so he was with the B. And he had been dressing to go to close a play that he was directing in the Fine Arts Palace. And the next one was somebody that was making movies, but he wasn't really, he was writing for films. I forget his name. And the next one, they hadn't checked off, and the next one was me. And I was looking down the list of all the people I knew. Americans. And they checked me off, and then they put me in a cell with 2 Cuban women and a dyed-haired German woman. And I turned the light on, and they had to turn the light out. And then somebody came, a doctor and his wife, who were at the party, and they brought me some money and some cigarettes because I smoked then. And the next morning, these 2 Cuban, one was dark, very dark, and one was brown. These 2 Cuban women said to me, "You have to scrub the floor." And I said, "Why?" And they said, "Because you've never scrubbed the floor. We have all scrubbed it." And I thought that was enough reason. And the German woman said, "Back home, a black woman like that would be scrubbing my floor." And they said, "What did she say? What did she say?" And I said, maybe I better not tell them. But this went on until, let me see, Saturday. They picked me up on a Friday night, Saturday, Sunday. On Monday, the only thing I had to read was Brave New World in English.
Oh, gosh.
Which was very depressing.
4 days.
I found out that they were, one was telling the other one's fortune. The Cubans, with these cards that have coins and swords and things. And I said, "Oh, tell mine. You have to pass my hand with some silver." So I gave her a piece of silver. And I shoveled the cards and cut them and make a wish. And I wished I'd get out. She said, "Now put them in 3 piles. I'm in 3 piles. So she started laying out the cards. She laid out one and said, "You're going to have an interview with the dark man." She laid out the next and said, "You're going to have some drinks." And she said, "You're going to get some unexpected money." And somebody beat on the door and called me out, and they took me. Well, they let me go. Not to make it a long story, they let me go. They took me up to Gobernacion, and a man interviewed me and said, "You're at liberty." And I left. It didn't occur to me that he was a dark man. I went home, and Pancho came in with the doctor's wife. And they had been out trying to get me out. "How did you get out?" And I said, "Who got me out was the Secretary of Education, because he had some work of mine. I mean, a cabinet member it took. And the other people were deported. And so we had some tequila.
Yes.
And the next day I went to the library, the American library, to take some books back, which were overdue. And as I came out, the man that worked at our gallery was going by on a bicycle. And he said, "Weren't you in jail?" And I said, "Yes. But I'm out." So he said, "There's some money for you at the gallery." And I always wondered what was the rest of my fortune.